In this video, I will present my final projection for the 2024 election. More than 4 years have elapsed during which we have analyzed this race review, encompassing numerous polls, forecasts, and betting markets, culminating in this moment. I accurately predicted Joe Biden's electoral victory of 306 to 232 in 2020. Today, I am presenting my definitive electoral map projection for 2024. We shall commence immediately. Not a justification for time expenditure. The discussion will commence with the secure states for both candidates, focusing on races where Harris or Trump will achieve a victory margin of 12 percentage points or greater. The safe states for Trump include Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except its 2nd district, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, and Alaska. Kamala Harris will subsequently dominate the West Coast, securing Washington, Oregon, and California, in addition to Hawaii, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and Maine's 1st District. She will visit Kamala Harris, who has 181 electoral votes, and Donald Trump, who has 125. However, this is scarcely a cause for apprehension. Provided that all the secure states are populated with the feasible states, he will traverse a considerable distance. Consequently, 5 to 12 points are the determining factors in these contests. Although one candidate will maintain a distinct advantage, they will be significantly more competitive than the stable states. Initially, we shall commence with the states most probable for the former president. He is poised to perform exceptionally well in the lower Midwest, specifically in Ohio and Iowa, where he has consistently succeeded in the past 2 election cycles. These 2 states indeed contemplate the map's appearance in 2012. Ohio favored Obama by 3%, while Iowa favored him by 6%. Trump shifts Iowa 15 points to the right in just 4 years, securing a 9.4% victory. Ohio exhibits an 11-point variation. Trump secures an 8.1% victory in Ohio. Trump repeats his actions in 2020 despite widespread belief that Joe Biden will surpass Hillary Clinton. He secures Iowa with an 8.2% margin and Ohio by 8. Effectively identical margins. Trump is likely to secure victory in these 2 states by a margin of 10 points or more against Kamala Harris. However, surpassing a 12-point lead will be considerably challenging. Consequently, they will be categorized as probable Republicans. Texas and Florida follow, 2 additional contests that will undoubtedly lack competitiveness. Trump secured victories in both of these states in 2016 and 2020. Since the election of Jimmy Carter in 1996, Texas has consistently been a Republican stronghold. It has not turned blue. Historically, Florida has consistently ranked as one of the most competitive states in the Union. In 2012, it was the sole tilt state observable on the map. The year 2016 witnessed yet again a decision margin of less than 2 points. Trump won in Florida by 1.2 percentage points. In 2020, when many anticipated Joe Biden would reclaim the state for the Democrats, Trump tripled his margin and is likely to replicate this behavior again. Polling in Florida indicates that the former president is ahead by approximately 8 points. He will undoubtedly succeed by a margin of at least 10 points within the state of Texas. Concurrently, Trump appears to be in excellent condition. He was only supported by a margin of 5.6. In 2020, his polling average exceeds by 8 points. When asked, he was simply anticipated to achieve a victory by a margin of 1. Polls conducted at the conclusion of the 2020 election cycle suggested that Trump had a minimal chance of defeating Biden in Texas. That was evidently destined to be incorrect. Texas will not transition to a Democratic majority for an extended duration. Today unequivocally favors the Republicans. Maine's 2nd District has finally been acquired. The outcome will not be competitive. Trump is poised to achieve victory on 3 occasions. Consequently, with the stable and probable states now secured for the former president, Donald Trump assumes the spotlight. He is merely 51 votes away from the presidency, holding 219 electoral votes. We will now outline the anticipated state races for Kamala Harris. She will prevail by 5 to 12 points. We will initially proceed westward from Colorado and New Mexico Two states acquired and exhibited commendable performance in the recent election. In Colorado, he surpassed Trump by 13.5 percentage points. It was precisely blue. Biden won New Mexico by a margin of 10.8. Kamala Harris is poised to win Colorado by a margin of less than 10 percentage points. Present day, it is probable that she possesses it by 8 or 9. Undoubtedly a significant decrease from the Democratic level of 4 years prior. A similar situation applies in New Mexico. Kamala Harris will not secure victory by a double-digit margin. If she manages to secure a victory with a 7% margin, 11 points should not be considered fortunate. Consequently, the vice president is likely to belong to either race. Minnesota follows, with Kamala Harris projected to win by slightly more than 7 points. The competition will be more intense than it was 4 years ago when Joe Biden won Minnesota by 7.1%. At this juncture, he was running alongside Harris, his companion. Kamala Harris hails from California, which is geographically distant from Minnesota. Today, Kamala Harris is campaigning with Governor Tim Walz, the actual governor of Minnesota. Her scoring is barely exceeding 5%, and I believe she has a 4.8-point lead over Donald Trump in the state. Considering Joe Biden's superior performance, that is indeed a deplorable margin. Kamala Harris is once more campaigning alongside the actual governor of the state. She ought to secure a victory by at least 9 to 10 points in 22. Tim Walz was reelected as governor by a substantial margin exceeding double digits. However, Walz is not performing as effectively with Kamala Harris on the ticket. Minnesota is likely to be marginally blue. Harris is leading by slightly more than a 5-point margin. She will encounter numerous challenges throughout the campaign if she fails to surpass Joe Biden in the home state of her running mate. We will now advance to the Northeast, where Maine and New Hampshire are located, two states where Kamala Harris's performance will closely resemble that of Joe Biden's. What is expected to exhibit a distinct decrease in 2020. Joe Biden secured victory in New Hampshire by a margin of 7.4%. Kamala Harris is leading by approximately 5 or 6 votes. Maine was won by Joe Biden by a margin of 9-1. Kamala Harris is achieving approximately a 7 to 8 rating. Consequently, these are two contests in which the vice president's performance has been relatively mediocre. These states are consistently shifting leftward. The Democrats are exhibiting progressively improved performance. However, Kamala Harris is included on the ballot. Consequently, we will observe a shift in that trend, as she evidently cannot surpass the incumbent president. Consequently, albeit marginally, the Granite State in Maine will likely be blue in color. The 2nd District of Nebraska follows, in which Joe Biden won by 6.6%. The 2nd District is, however, more liberal than it was previously due to the redistricting that occurred after the 2010 census, primarily Omaha and several adjacent suburbs. Kamala Harris is poised to secure victory by a margin of nearly 10 points. It is likely blue. Lastly, on this map, Virginia is the most probable state. It is anticipated that Kamala Harris will achieve victory by approximately half of Biden's 10-point margin starting in 2020. She will not be able to exceed 7. Probably not exceeding 6 either. A 5-point margin of victory is justifiable considering Hillary Clinton won by over 5% in 2016. Her overall performance was undoubtedly subpar. Virginia in the interim has been shifting towards the right. Harris is likely to perform significantly worse than the incumbent president for this primary reason. For the time being, we will likely concede to the Democrats, leaving us with only 7 battleground states remaining. This does not surprise me in the least. We have primarily concentrated on these 7 races throughout the year, and with them still unfilled, Kamala Harris exceeds 219 electoral votes with 226. The election remains a tie until we reach these battlegrounds. This assembly of 7 is indeed precisely that. Despite comprising merely 93 of the 538 electoral college votes, they wield significant power. The results in all other states are fundamentally predetermined. In states such as Minnesota, Virginia, or New Hampshire, there were regions where Trump appeared to excel. In reality, those are consistently distant attempts. It was feasible if Trump continued to excel in those states. However, with only 1 day remaining, I must inform you that this will not occur. Any assertion that Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, or New Mexico is genuinely competitive is unequivocally false. Consequently, 2 of the 7 states will be designated as lead. Consequently, the remaining 5 will be inclined. Lean states will consequently be determined by a margin of 1 to 5 points. Clearly, tilt states do not reach a value of 1. We will commence in the southern region of the Sun Belt. We will commence with the 2 lean states. Both individuals will be attending Donald Trump. I begin in Arizona, where Donald Trump is anticipated to win by 1 to 3 points. The closeness of these races renders anything possible, considering that Trump secured Arizona by nearly 4 points in 2016 and subsequently lost by 0.3 points to Joe Biden in 2020. It appears highly probable that he will prevail in that state. The polls indicate that Trump is currently ahead by 2.6%. According to the graph, his lead has consistently increased as the election nears. He is performing exceptionally well. It is highly unlikely that he will lose Arizona for the former president. This is unequivocally a victorious state. If he loses Arizona, the contest concludes immediately. He will undoubtedly reclaim Arizona. It will be the inaugural lean red state delineated. Georgia, positioned on the opposite side of the Sun Belt, will inherently be the other lean state. This race closely resembles the Arizona election. Trump narrowly lost Georgia with a margin of 0.24% between Biden and the former president. Both of these states represented significant turning points for Joe Biden in 2020. Since 1996, no Democrat has secured victory in Arizona. Throughout Georgia, it is necessary to return to 1992. Considering the significance of these victories for Democrats, Kamala Harris, who is underperforming relative to Joe Biden, is not positioned to replicate the success Biden attained 4 years prior. As they have consistently voted for the past 30 years, both states are likely to revert to the Republican column. Georgia assigns Trump a 2.3% share in the polling average. Partiality. A recent New York Times poll indicates that Harris leads by 1 point, and it is evidently going to be incorrect. The New York Times consistently amplifies the Democratic count after Harris reached her zenith following the Democratic conference. Trump has maintained a lead since early September. Since the middle of the previous month, Trump's advantage has been increasing. He is in an advantageous position here. Georgia's fundamental character remains conservative, and on this map, it will be categorized as an alternative Republican-leaning state. Consequently, victories in Arizona and Georgia are essential to delineate Trump's potential pathways to success. If Trump does not succeed in obtaining these 2 states, it is highly unlikely he will win any of the other competitive states needed to achieve 270 electoral votes. Despite the possibility of losing, he is quite likely to secure victories in Georgia and Arizona. Consequently, this fundamentally signifies his minimum threshold. Approximately 1% or slightly more will likely influence all 5 of the remaining states. However, due to their intense competitiveness, I will categorize them collectively under the tilt classifications for either Democrats or Republicans. Currently, North Carolina and Pennsylvania represent Trump's most expedient paths to victory, with the Pennsylvania route appearing more probable at this time. It may also traverse North Carolina and Wisconsin. Nevada possesses merely 6 electoral votes, therefore securing Nevada holds minimal significance for Trump. North Carolina certainly does. In fact, Trump is performing quite well in North Carolina. His polling average exceeds by 1.5%. He is clearly the preferred choice. He secured North Carolina in 2016 and 2020 from the 7 battleground states he won in both previous elections. This is the sole instance. He lost Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania in 2020, but he retained North Carolina and is poised to secure it again. I do possess a Republican tilt here, however. He has maintained the lead in the polling average throughout the election cycle, though the margin will be relatively smaller. Mark Robinson, the Republican gubernatorial nominee, is the factor that renders North Carolina more appealing to me as a competitive state. He has executed a campaign with disastrous results. His involvement in numerous scandals will likely result in a defeat to Josh Stein by nearly a double-digit margin. Robinson is unlikely to undermine Trump in the presidential race. However, he is certainly not assisting the former president. Consequently, I perceive the voting tendencies of the Tar Heel state as more liberal than those of both Arizona and Georgia. Trump, possessing 262 electoral votes, is therefore merely 8 votes short of the presidency. He will desire any one of the 3 upper Midwestern states, each possessing 19 electoral votes. Pennsylvania is also highly probable to be the keystone state. That assists him in alleviating his agitation. An election is imminent there, and Trump establishes the rate at 0.3%. Although Republicans appear favorable, particularly with early voting, the outcome will undoubtedly be closely contested until the end. Subsequent to the early 2020 voting period, they trailed by nearly 1 million. Currently, Democrats hold a lead of fewer than 500,000 votes. Their objective was a buffer of 500,000 or possibly 600,000. Their reach was insufficient to achieve that. In a state they won by a mere 80,000 votes 4 years prior, that slight margin will be quite consequential. The initial attempted assassination of Trump also occurred in Pennsylvania. He will derive a modest advantage from that. In a race as close as this, every minute detail is significant. Pennsylvania will consequently be the second tilt state on the map by a marginal difference. I support Trump. Despite the proximity of this election, Arizona is not essential considering victories in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Nevertheless, Donald Trump achieved success with these 4 victories. He will continue to exert additional effort. Given his 1% polling average lead, Trump is poised to secure victory in Nevada. Given that Nevada has not voted Republican since the 2004 census, this is the 2004 election, securing a victory here will be difficult for the former president. A victory in this instance would be quite consequential. Despite the close polling between the two candidates, I sincerely appreciate your viewership of this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel and indicate below your predicted election winner.